When you look at the American Songbook, which is jazz standards, the music that we learn to learn jazz, and the music you hear in jazz clubs all the time. That's a songbook that was built on the popular music of the time, which is at that time it was all about music theater. So a lot of the pop music theater things in the 40s, Broadway show tunes, musicians would take and do covers of, and that's how you get, Miles Davis playing "Surrey with a Fringe on Top," or George and Ira Gershwin having like a million tunes that are in the book. So Charlie looks at it the same way. He says this is music of an era, popular music of an era, and we're going to do our take on it.
All right, so Zach, you being a fan of video games, would you ever want to make your own video game, or at least kind of be a big part of being the principal composer of, let's say, a particular project?
Yeah, obviously. To the second question, definitely yes. Most of the projects I've worked on with Japan are and in AAA are they have their own in-house composing team. That's kind of the way they do it in Japan. Is they have in-house like salaried composers who just compose all day for Capcom or Square Enix or whoever it might be, Bandai Namco. But every once in a while, they'll either be looking outside that skill set, which is how I got involved in this in the first place. They were looking for somebody who could do jazz, or they want to, for whatever reason, they want to look for a foreign composer, or just a composer that's not within their company. So I usually get involved at that level, which is where there's still other people composing a lot of the tracks, and then I'm composing the ones that are suited to my style. For something like that's what happened with like Street Fighter. But for something like Jump Force, that was all independent composers composing for that one. There was one independent Japanese composer who was a former employee of Bandai Namco. Arima is his last name, and he was the lead composer on that. They trusted him from that relationship, and so he put together a composition team. And I had worked at him when he was at Bandai Namco on Mobile Suit Gundam game, and so
wow.
he knew me from that, and so he brought me in on that project. But that was all independent composers.
What kind of game would you want to make?
Yeah, so if I were to make a game, first of all, I would love to have like 48 more hours a day to study coding or something and have that skill set, but there's just not enough time in the day to do that and practice all my instruments. But in the fanciful world where I know how to program and I can make my own game, I would definitely do a story-based game like an RPG. Those are the ones I love playing.
Me too.
Yeah, I hardly have time to sit down and play like a 120-hour game anymore. But
gotta avoid Xenoblade Chronicles then.
Oh yeah, that's on the 2 playlist.
It's a great game, but it is very long.
No, I love those games. I love doing that, but also the completionist syndrome kind of takes over, like, why do I need to collect that last stone? It doesn't get me anything. I've already beaten the game. I just need it, okay? I just
need 100% everything.
Yeah, so 15 more hours down the tubes, No, it's
worth it.
Yeah.
Hey, Kids of Karendow is a nice zippy game. It's fast-paced.
It is right now, but I'm just thinking like there's about in the current build, I think there will probably be about 3 hours of gameplay, but we're adding all the side quest stuff in now, so that's going to balloon really quickly as we continue to build that stuff out. So it won't be as fast as we think it is. I'm actually thinking that game's going to be a lot longer than what we initially planned it to be.
Yeah,
well that's good. I like how in the beginning you're in prison and then you have to break out, so that's nice and snappy, right? But yeah, I'm sure there's moments of the game where it slows down too.
Actually, I have a question for you on that note, because we were talking before we went live about that you were telling me a little bit about your game, but you said you were making a JRPG.
Yes.
And is that, obviously that's a style, but does it seem a little bit odd being in America and
making a
JRPG.
Japanese role
Yeah.
playing game. Well, I think
it
there's a
still
lot
called
of
that?
indies out there who are US based that make JRPGs. Because if you look at like the difference between your Western RPGs and the JRPGs are ones that are more on rails and more kind of like based off of a set of characters versus you're sort of creating the character and you're not on rails and you're exploring the world and sort of experiencing the story how you want to instead of how the developers want to experience it. I like JRPGs. I grew up on them. I don't mind Western RPGs, but I think you get more character development and story. Like I'm experiencing someone else's story for sure. I'm not
Right.
experiencing the way I want to experience it, and I think I actually prefer experiencing someone else's artwork.
Yeah, I'm the same way in that regard. Experiencing it in the third person rather in the first person.
Yes.
And I also just thinking about the reverse of that. I guess no one calls Dark Souls like a JRPG, even though it's made in Japan, right?
A Souls-like game, like
Oh,
that's
it's
become
its
a
own
genre
thing.
unto
Okay.
itself now. Which is I've never played Dark. I've never played any of the Souls games.
Neither have I. They seem really hard.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're great, but I'm not really in it to try to overcome something. I'm in it for the story.
I'm avoiding Metroid Dread because I've heard it's really hard, and I was really wanting to actually play a Metroid game, but it's like, no, I'm gonna get pissed off at it, so I'm not gonna buy it.
Yeah. Oh man, we're so weak. There's some hardcore gamers listening right now who are just definitely like eating their breakfast, like cursing at us.
Maybe if I were like a teenager again or a little kid where I had the patience.
Yeah, the
I
patience.
don't even know if I had the patience for the time. Yeah.
Mm.
No, man, if you were a teenager again, Blair, you'd probably put more time into Karendow.
Well, I put a lot of time when we were kids working on the same game.
You know, one thing I will not do though is for my first playthrough of a game, which is the only playthrough these days, but for my first playthrough of a game, I will not look up online what I'm supposed to do.
I do. If I get stuck or I'm not sure, it's like I don't want to waste time figuring it out. I just
it's a hard urge to break, right? But then at a certain point, for me, that's kind of the line where I'm not experiencing it anymore. You know, it's not like I'm not feeling like I don't need the sense of accomplishment necessarily, but it's like, am I playing a game or why don't I just watch this on YouTube now?
That's fair. The only thing is I got stuck so many times in games as kids because I didn't know what to do next. And I'm pretty sure that was a common experience for a lot of people back in the day, pre-internet, well, you can call the 1-800 or 1-900 numbers or whatever and ask for help, but my parents would let me do that.
No, that's why you have Nintendo Power. Are you kidding? That's why I still have like 36 issues of that sitting in my attic.
As a Sega fanboy, there wasn't the same thing for Sega back then.
Oh yeah, me and Blair used to be Nintendo versus Sega rivals back in the day too.
Oh man, rivals all around.
Dumb kid stuff.
I'm sure one of you was Pokemon Red, one was Blue.
I never really played Pokemon.
Oh, okay.
Neither did I.
You'd like it.
I probably would.
Yeah, if you like linear JRPGs.
Yeah, but I guess the animal collecting or monster collecting RPG never really sparked my interest. I didn't find it. Yeah, I just never really got into it.
Yeah, well, again, to each his own.
Exactly.
All right, so Zach, what's keeping you busy these days?
Well, I just last week recorded a new EP.
So what's an EP?
Electronic Press, I believe, is what it stands for. It's just a smaller album, basically. You're not putting out physical releases, which used to be not a given when EPs were first coming out. But so yeah, 3 or 4 tracks. So I just went into the studio with my quartet, jazz quartet, and for this one also had a string quartet plus a really special soloist named Jeremy Kittle, violin soloist, joined for one song. So they're 2 tunes that I wrote in the last couple of years, and one that I wrote in college that I've just never gotten a good recording of that I still like. So I still have to do a bunch of editing on that. So that's keeping me busy for sure, editing and mixing. And then, there are some game projects as well. And I have a couple shakuhachi performances coming up sort of in the contemporary classical space.
Any
Um,
game projects you can actually talk about, or all
I
on
can never talk
NDA?
about anything I'm working
Got
on
it.
right now. Nah,
Darn.
but yeah, there should be. I mean, they always get the deadlines always get pushed also. So I'd like to say like there should be an exciting one coming this December, but I don't know. It'll probably get pushed until next summer. Yeah. So yeah, you'll I'll certainly be posting about it on Instagram when I do finally get these things out, because there was a lot. The video game industry did not slow down over the pandemic. That's for sure.
Say it's sped up.
Yeah, it was kind
We're
of built
playing a
for
lot more.
social distancing, so
Yeah.
wasn't too affected.
So when your EPs are ready, let us know. We'll definitely promote them on Twitter, Instagram, etc.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
if you know when they are, feel free to say it right now if you actually know. But
Man, I have no idea. If it'd be a miracle to get it done editing before the end of the year, but probably release sometimes. Well, it has to release sometime next year.
we're going to pivot here. And we're talking. You already mentioned it a little bit. The 8-bit big band.
Oh yeah.
I saw them back in 2019 in Boston before COVID and all that stuff. But let's start with, what is the 8-bit big band?
So the 8-bit big band is that's Charlie Rosen's project. Charlie Rosen is not human. He's an android sent from some other planet where everybody is extremely musically talented and plays every single instrument. And he decided with that talent that he was going to. He's also a huge video game nerd, and grew up playing the same kind of games I did, and especially a lot of classic Nintendo games. So he put together this big band where he arranges all of the music with his very special and deft touch. And he's just using a bunch of really slamming New York musicians, like the best jazz musicians in New York City. So it's probably the best big band I've ever played in, like video game music or not. And it's super tight. The arrangements are super awesome. Charlie's a great band leader, and it's just one of the most fun bands to play in and play live shows with.
How did you get involved with it?
Charlie, how did he call me in the first place? So I actually met Charlie at Berkeley in 2010, I want to say. He was my roommate. Asked me to sub for him on a project that Charlie was putting together at college, and I'd gotten the dates mixed up. Yeah, I thought it was so I did the rehearsal, and then I couldn't do the recording, and I thought at that point, okay, well, I'll never work with him again. I just showed myself to be unreliable. And then flash forward, like I think 2017 is when he started the band, 2017 or 2018, but he had just gone to Japan right before he started the band, and I just saw randomly on Facebook that he was looking for a shamisen and a shamisen teacher, and I had just come back from Japan. He wanted to pick one up while he was there. Shamisen is it's kind of like a Japanese banjo, like 3-stringed, has a big old, not a pick but a plectrum. It's this humongous thing that they slap the instrument with. And you've definitely heard the sounds in some JRPGs wherever there's classic Japanese music. But so I hooked him up with a shamisen teacher there, and that's how we reconnected. And then he just called me randomly saying, "Hey, you want to come play some video game music?" And I said, "Do I want to come play some video game music?" Yeah, yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome. I really loved that performance. I love the show. It was a lot of fun. I apologize I did not stick around to talk to you after. I always meant to sort of talk to you after that and say, "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't see you," etc. But I was.
We were supposed to have a lot more shows after that, so you were going to have a lot more opportunities.
COVID would have, COVID kind of took care of that. But I had to go home. Like I had to hop on a train like 6 a.m. the next day, and I was like, Oof. I just got to go to bed. So
yeah.
My biggest request for the 8-bit big band is more Sonic music and more Sega Genesis JRPG music like Phantasy Star 4. If you can convince them to do that, that would be so awesome. I'll be like front row center.
Yeah, I'll put a word in. He's always looking for recommendations for music because we've done, I think, the entire Super Mario catalog at this point. Like he's done a whole lot of Mario music. So I know he's done like one or two from Sonic.
Yeah, I think he
there's
did
a lot of great music in there.
Spring Yard and one other. I've actually listened to them recently, so but it's escaping my mind right now. But whatever.
Yeah, there's one that he always mispronounces at shows.
Oh yes, Hydrocity versus
Yeah,
Hydro
that's the
City.
one.
Yeah. I pronounce it Hydro City.
Everybody always gets mad at him no matter how he pronounces it.
I'm a Hydro City guy, not a Hydrocity guy.
Okay, yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. This is the water zone in that one. It's either Hydro City or Hydrocity Zone.
I mean, it's got to be Hydro City. Come on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you're with me now.
Look at it. What did they think?
So now that COVID's kind of, letting up a little bit, are there any new
don't
shows?
say it too loud.
Okay. Oh yeah, knock on wood. Are there any new shows planned right now, or is it still kind of paused?
For 8-Bit Big Band?
Yeah.
Well, Charlie's been in London for the last 6 months, working on a movie. I'm not sure how much I can say about his movie, but he's been like working on a movie. He's at like Abbey Road Studios all day. He's living the dream.
That's pretty cool.
But so I'm not sure when the next live show is going to be, but he's Charlie, so he never sleeps. And like I said, he's an alien. So if he does, he's just kind of composing or arranging in his sleep. But he has been arranging more music for the next album. So it's not like we've been stagnant, or not like he's been stagnant. So that's something to look forward to. I would expect early next year. I'm not too sure on the details.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm sure when he's back though, he's going to want to get another show together.
Have you guys ever performed in New York City, or is it kind of too expensive to get a hall and all that stuff here?
No, we've performed twice. We did one we performed three times in New York City. One of them was, God, I'm forgetting the name of the place. There's this underground venue. It was our first show ever. This underground venue in like the Soho area, and it was sort of a smaller room, and it was so sold out. So it was such a fire hazard, all the people we had in there. And it was also super loud because the ceilings are really low, and we didn't have risers for the trumpets. So they're just like right into the back of your heads, But it was super, super fun, really high energy. And the next one we did was at Sony Hall, which is in Midtown. But even Sony Hall, fitting like a full big band plus string section is hard to fit on a stage, and hard to find a board. Not like the one that's definitely right behind me with a million inputs, but it's hard to find a place that can handle all that. I had to play a shakuhachi solo where I couldn't hear myself, like over a big band.
Oh wow.
We were doing something from Goemon. Goemon's Great Adventure was his obscure N64 game. But there's a shakuhachi solo he wrote on that, and I was just like praying that I was making a sound because I couldn't hear anything I was playing, because they didn't get my monitor like happening before with the show. They had so many other lines to check.
Obviously, it worked out though.
As far as you know, people screamed either in horror or in approval. I'm not sure which one. Still trying to.
Or they couldn't hear over their own screaming, and it all just worked out anyway.
Yeah, maybe they're just like, "Hey, that guy's standing up." Yeah, yeah. That it's fun to play the video game music for these audiences, because especially like the JRPGs and stuff. Like people will sit there and they'll have a relationship with this music because they've listened to it on loop for tens of hours at a time.
Guilty.
Yeah. Like while playing the game. And so it really means something to them. And so the most passionate audiences I've ever played for are video game audiences. I had the chance to play with Nobuo Uematsu years ago with an orchestra while I was in Boston at PAX East. And it was the first PAX East, I think, because again, fire hazard, they didn't like think about capacity. We had like 7,500 people in this like big hollowed out convention hall, and Nobuo Uematsu was there. They had cameras on him, and you knew we were playing One Winged Angel, and every time he came on screen, you couldn't hear anything. It was just a wall of screaming, and you see people crying in the audience. He means so much to people, myself included.
You know, One Wing Angel is a pretty, pardon my language, fucking awesome song. I was actually listening to it this morning. So
Yeah.
there's an orchestra that I watch on YouTube out of Paris that plays that and the Genova music from Final Fantasy, also from Final Fantasy 7, and it's it it pulls the heartstrings.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say like my dream would be to play the Zeromus song with Nubu. That's the one. It's the
Which
final
one?
boss music for Final Fantasy 2.
Oh wow, you're going way back.
Yeah,
Was that Japanese too or American too?
that's American 2. So Japanese, I think it would be 4.
Okay.
Blair, you must have played that game when you were in my
Yeah,
house.
I did.
Right?
I don't remember the music though.
Oh, you gotta listen to it, man.
Yeah,
It's
I'll go back and
It's
listen
a
to that.
sick track.
Well, I have it on my Nintendo DS. That's the first time I actually owned it, and it was the 3D remake, so it was a little different.
You know, I had an interesting relationship with his music. He was one of the huge, obviously Final Fantasy X, and then I went on a whole Final Fantasy binge after that. All through high school, I was just going back playing the old games because 10 was the newest one at that point. And I had found the music of these old games, like the piano collections and the orchestral collections, before I played the games. And it was a sort of an interesting experience, like the reverse, because when usually you play the game and then you get to hear like, oh, this is what he was actually hearing, and that was just as close as he could get. But to kind of have what he was actually hearing as the original version, going back to the original in my mind, going back and playing like Final Fantasy 2 or 6, it didn't have the same, like I didn't have the same connection to the music, the original recordings, as I think most people did who played the games first. But I still had a big connection to the music because it was just beautiful music on its own.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm glad they do so many rearranges and concerts of this kind of music because it's brought it to a wider audience for sure.
I know it. Like, yeah, it actually doesn't matter how many covers of his music that I listen to. I enjoy them all because they're all going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because it's like each musician's own kind of inspiration or take on it.
Was
always
one of the? Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
No, go ahead.
Was it one of the inspirations for 8-bit Big Band to get a younger audience going, or maybe our age of audience going back to concert halls to listen to music again?
Yeah, that's kind of Charlie's concept for the whole thing. When you look at the American Songbook, which is jazz standards, the music that we learn to learn jazz, and the music you hear in jazz clubs all the time. That's a songbook that was built on the popular music of the time, which is at that time it was all about music theater. So a lot of the pop music theater things in the 40s, Broadway show tunes, musicians would take and do covers of, and that's how you get, Miles Davis playing "Surrey with a Fringe on Top," or George and Ira Gershwin having like a million tunes that are in the book. So Charlie looks at it the same way. He says this is music of an era, popular music of an era, and we're going to do our take on it. And a side effect of that is certainly, I'm not sure how much it was intended, maybe it was, but I think Charlie's intention was mostly he loves this music and he wants to arrange it and have a big band play it. But a side effect of that is certainly, and sort of a mission that has grown out of it now that he's been doing it, seems to be young people are listening to jazz. Maybe this is their first introduction to jazz just because they had a relationship with a video game tune. And that's great. Hopefully they go off and they explore more jazz that's not necessarily video game music, or if this is just where they enjoy it, that's fine too. But jazz needs all the vitality it can injected into it these days.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just gonna go on to the next question.
All right.
But unless you had something to add, Blair.
No, I'm good.
All right. So yeah, back to Zach. So tell us what you find the most interesting about like all the different mediums that you create music for. Like you've done video games, live shows, albums, and also film. How have those different experiences made you grow as a musician?
I'd say, it's I view each project. There's your own creative work and there's client work, and both can be fulfilling, but you have to approach each very differently. When I'm writing for myself, the goal is to come up with something brand new that nobody else has done before, or express something that I'm feeling, or to really explore. And so the satisfaction comes from coming up with something really new and cool and like nobody's done this before. But if I try to take that concept to client work, whether it's video games or film or commercials or anything, they might say that sounds cool, but that's not the purpose of this. The purpose here is to craft the emotions underneath our scene, or underneath whatever it is that we're scoring here. So I've learned to kind of put when I first started, when they would tell me it sounds too jazzy, I would take that as an insult. I'd be like, how dare you insult my baby? And that's an instinct that's really hard to suppress for any creative person. When you worked really hard on a thing and you're like, yeah, that's it. And you turn it in expecting them to be on the same page. And then they're like, it's all right, but it's not really what we were thinking of. Can you make it more like Cowboy Bebop? Like the instinct is to sigh and go, yeah, we can make it more like Cowboy Bebop. Or get mad and say, no, we can't make it like. That's what Stravinsky did when they had him score a couple movies, or try to score one movie. And within like the first couple cues, the director said, yeah, but could we make this change? And he said, no. I am Stravinsky. No. And so he wasn't a very good film composer, because he was writing for him, not for the client. So I've learned to kind of put that ego in check and just say, not take things personally when I get that feedback. It's just like, okay, it's not what you're looking for. My goal is to get you what you're looking for. And if I can sneak in a cool jazzy chord here and there, I'll do it. But usually it's my favorite part that they highlight and say, oh, we like everything except for that right there.
Like,
Yeah, got him again. But then that's okay. I'll just take that out and put it in a folder, and I'll use it on something else of my own sometime.
You feel the same way when I do that to you, Gary?
What's that? No, I just tell you to go fuck yourself.
No.
See, working in the indie space, you can do that.
Yeah. But I would only do that to Blair just because he's my friend, and you probably tell me the same thing, right?
Yeah, and I do.
Sounds like a healthy.
See, Zach, all the fun is in the indie space.
Yeah,
you gotta come
working
here.
relationship you guys have. I can't.
Even when Blair is right, I'll tell him to go fuck.
I definitely can't say fuck you when I get when Capcom tells me to make a revision. That would be problematic.
Come to the indie space. Come work with us at Gumbo. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if you've heard of Gumbo. We talk about it all the time on the podcast, though.
I've never heard of it. No.
Well, it's a group of a bunch of game developers, and there's a few musicians involved as well. They have a shared working space in Brooklyn in Dumbo, and I go there a couple times a week I work from there on Fridays for my day job, and then I do some game stuff, and I go one day on the weekend as well. You'll see a lot of people you met at Playcrafting. It's very much a lot of the same people. It's a lot of fun. But that's cool. I mean, if you want to get involved in an indie project, you might need to lower your rates a tad, because I might not be able to afford you otherwise.
You don't know my rates.
What's that?
You don't know my rates.
I do not know your rates. I'm just assuming.
For all you know, I'm working for free. That's why I have all these credits.
Probably. I'm going to guess it's probably not true, but okay.
Yeah. Have you seen the studio behind me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it must cost you a lot to download that JPEG.
Thank you, Gary. I couldn't think of a witty comment there. You got it.
All right, Zach. What advice would you give to other aspiring musicians, artists, or creators?
Oh man. Well, I guess to make it broad, you mean people trying to get into games?
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, get
yeah,
into
Start
let's
with
keep
games
going.
games.
because yeah, I got plenty of advice for all those whippersnappers out there, just in life in general. But getting into games or yeah, any industry that you want to get into, really. I mean, what I was just talking about. First of all, like check your ego at the door. That's never going to help you. Just be really easy to work with. It actually reminds me. There's a jazz guitarist in the city told me this mantra that I kind of go by now, and it's to be a musician, all you got to do is show up on time, be a good time, and have good time. If you can do all three of those things, you're golden. So show up on time. Don't be late because it doesn't matter how good you are if you're not on time. Be a good time. Nobody wants to work with somebody who's difficult to work with, who's causing problems or is just a jerk. And then have good time. Basically, be a good musician. Have good tempo, like control of your tempo and so on. So that can be in any job, really, especially in creative jobs where you're working on a team. That's having that mentality is key. Um, Aside from that, just finding that first gig is really difficult, and you can almost feel a little desperate when you don't have any gigs. I certainly went through it. When I moved from Boston to New York, I was going back to Boston every weekend to play wedding gigs, taking the mega bus of all things. It's a wonder that I'm still here and I'm not like infected with some kind of disease that was previously unknown to man.
I've taken the megabus before. It's not that bad. Okay, man.
Oh man, I've taken so many. Once I discovered Bolt Bus, it was life changing. But that's what I had to do to make ends meet. To make before I made the connections that I needed in New York to start working more regularly, and I could stop taking a 4-hour trip up, 4-hour trip back on a horrible bus. Sorry, Megabus isn't sponsoring this today, is it?
No, we don't
Okay,
have any
good,
sponsors.
good, and they never will. But
You just
but
cost us a sponsor, man.
yeah, so I mean, you got to believe in what you're trying to do and do anything that you have to make that happen. And that might mean taking a gig outside of music or whatever it is you're trying to do. It might mean doing things like going to Boston every weekend to make it happen. But the important thing is that you keep on going because your first connection might not have anything for you right now, but 2 years from then, they might, if they remember you, they might hire you for that thing. And then if you do a good job, they'll tell for their friends that you did a good job. And then the next time they're looking for a composer, one of those friends might call you. And it's like this tree that just spreads out. And eventually you have enough connections that you have consistent work. And then you're kind of golden. But none of that happens if your skills aren't up to par, if you're alienating people because you're not fun to work with, or if you don't get things done or don't show up on time. So with that base layer, you just have to have patience and stick with it. And eventually luck will find you, but you have to be ready when that luck arrives.
That is wonderful advice. That's great. We are going to close out with an easy one. Well, actually, I am going to give you a chance to promote anything you want to promote after this, but we are going to close out with an easy one. I'm putting the bunny ears on that. You've been around the New York game development scene for a while. Maybe COVID kind of put a damper on that for everyone. But what
I was there at the start of Playcrafting.
You were, yeah. You've been around for forever.
Yeah.
What's been your favorite New York-based indie game?
That would have to be. I'm glad you let me look at this beforehand because I'd be like thinking, right? Oh, there's that one, there's that one, there's that one. But that would have to be Lamplight City by Karendow
wow.
Games. Did you play that one?
Yes, I love Lamplight City. I gotta have him on the podcast when we do our season 2.
Yeah, Francisco
Yeah,
Gonzalez. Yeah, he's always coming to the audio hangs in New York also.
Oh, really? Does he do music?
No, he doesn't. I mean, he knows a thing or two about audio, but Mark Bennis did the music for that one. But yeah, music is tremendous. The writing is fantastic. I mean, I knew he was a good designer and good artist, but I mean, you can't believe that this is just one guy who did all of it. And then the music and voice acting was done by, that's the only things he outsourced because he doesn't have 1,000 different voices. But yeah, it's an incredible game. It's a point and click adventure. Really, really nice art, like that old, you think like Monkey Island style.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
King's Quest, like the later ones.
yeah,
Like,
and
you
like
know,
I mean,
later ones.
there are all these different paths too. It's not easy either. It's a mystery game, and you have to figure out like multiple chapters of what's going on in there. And I was engrossed the entire game. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah, he's got talent in that. That's a great game, and I remember asking him questions about how he did a lot of the art with respect to the movement and the animations. And he told me he took pictures of himself in every pose he wanted the characters in the game to be, and then he just drew over. And it's like that
Oh
sounds
man.
painstaking, but also awesome.
Yeah, he's a super creative guy. I wouldn't be
Yeah, he
surprised if
is.
he like just came up with that idea himself, like to do that to make the art happen.
Yeah, he is. All right. Anything you want to promote before we close out here?
If this does go out the day that like what, November 7th, you're
November
saying?
7th with the first part, probably also second, probably November 14th.
Okay. Well, November 14th, I am playing with a shakuhachi quintet at Tenri Cultural Institute at 4 p.m. That's down near NYU New School kind of
We'll
area.
put all this in the
Yeah.
description as well. So people,
But yeah, it's a American premiere of a new composition for 5 shakuhachis, which is pretty much all the shakuhachi players in New York City. Um, but yeah, it's a great gathering. I'm going to be able to play some traditional Japanese music with my the guy who's taught me everything I know about the shakuhachi. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And anything else like that EP release, it all goes up on my Instagram, just at Zac Zinger.
great. We'll have all your social information in the description as well for both the YouTube version and the other podcast versions. Anyway, Zac, thank you for taking the time to do this. It's been a great pleasure having you on the podcast, and we got to get together again some point in the future here, and maybe we'll see at a play crafting event or grab a drink sometime or something.
Definitely.
But
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Always a pleasure to talk about game music.
thanks. It's been great having you.
Thank you, Zach.
All right, thanks, Gary.
Thanks for listening to the Phat Games podcast. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you get notifications of future videos.